beyond also Jonon Pana. I'm very happy to be with you tonight. I'd like to thank Pega Presenka for this very kind invitation. I will discuss a serious topic today. You know, French are known to be sometimes light, to love good discussions. This subject is very serious for us. And maybe I will shock you because I will start with figures, depressing numbers. First remark, do you know that globally 142 million women of reproductive age have absolutely no access to abortion, and almost 200 million women of reproductive age only have access to abortion when their life is in danger? That's a very striking figure. What is even more worrying is that according to the data provided by the United Nations in 2022, more than 130 women were killed every day in the world by their intimate partner or their family member, one family member. And another shocking figure is that more than a quarter of the world's population believes it is justified for a man to beat his wife. Cases of conflict-related sexual violence increased by 50% between 2022 and 2023, with women and girls experiencing 95% of this crime. It is United Nations figures. And climate-related disasters are not gender-neutral either. Women and children are 40 times more likely to die than men in natural disasters. So, when we saw that, not only that, we decided in France to adopt what is a feminist diplomacy. And the topic I'm going to tackle today is French feminist diplomacy and what is feminist diplomacy. A state has adopted a feminist diplomacy. It means that it places the rights of women and girls and gender equality at the heart of its foreign policy. We have pledged this in 2018, and we made these issues a priority of our action in every area. So it has to be mainstream: peace and security, climate and environment, development, democratic governance, human rights. All modalities of diplomatic action, both bilateral and multilateral, as well as consular activities, are concerned. France was the fourth country in the world to adopt a feminist diplomacy, after Sweden, Canada, and Luxembourg. And now there are more than 15 countries which have decided to join this movement of feminist diplomacy. Unfortunately, to tell you the truth, some of the founding members have decided to switch off the feminist diplomacy because new government came in power. And for instance, in Sweden, after elections, the new government, quite conservative, decided to forget this issue as a priority, not clearly, but as a priority, and they don't claim anymore to be a feminist diplomacy. So why adopt a feminist diplomacy strategy? At the current pace, according to UN Women, it will take nearly 300 years to achieve gender equality, given the numerous challenges and difficulties encountered in the past of France. France must continue and strengthen its ongoing efforts on this issue with its partner, taking into account the increasing number of crises, the rise of anti-rights movements in all forms. It is setting itself concrete and ambitious objective by adopting an international strategy for feminist diplomacy. We have adopted this year, the second 5-year strategy for feminist diplomacy. So adopting such a diplomacy requires working differently than what we used to do in the old days, I would say, 5 years, 7, 8 years ago. So we have tried to implement and to base our action on several innovative principles. First, strengthen commitment to partnerships at the bilateral and multilateral levels, a deepened European ambition, and sustained dialogue on the rights of women and girls and gender equality with all countries. So we are particularly active in Geneva, where there is a human rights corner of the UN, and that's a key place for us to be active. My first post as a ministry 20 years ago was already human rights issues in Geneva. I was in Paris, in Geneva. And I can assure you that in the last 20 years, we have changed dramatically in a positive manner. We are already active 20 years ago, but we are now even more adamant to push these issues, feeling a strong resistance from some countries. Name them. Easy to find Iran, Russia, all the conservative countries are very reluctant, and many more are very reluctant to move forward in this direction. There is also a participatory approach developed in collaboration with civil society. We are not discussing only in international forums, we are trying to implement on the ground, wherever we are, this strategy. We also have decided to develop an international expertise and research in this field, because we have a lot of doctrinal corpus of thoughts, and that's very important that we have an emphasis on this issue. We try to lead a collective mobilization in the ministries, diplomatic relations, European Union as well, which is quite receptive on that, and to share priorities, positions, and messages. And last point, very important, is a rigorous monitoring through an accountability framework evaluated by an independent body, which is the High Council for Equality between Women and Men, which was created in France some years ago, so as to make sure that it's not only words, but we have results. We work a lot with UN Women. I used to be, before coming to Mumbai, Deputy Director in France for the United Nations and international organizations. And I went many times to see UN Women, and we finance UN Women. We develop programs with UN Women, and we are very impressed by the dedication of this body, which is, I don't need to explain you read newspapers like me, which is under threat with the decision of a big country to stop financing a lot of international aid. So that's something we have to mobilize even more. So what are the priority commitments of France's international strategy for feminist diplomacy? We host recently the fourth Feminist Foreign Policy Conference, and we co-chair the Feminist Foreign Policy Group, FFP Plus 2025. We promote and defend sexual and reproductive health and rights, including the right to self-abortion, in multilateral fora, and advocate for the inclusion of the right to abortion in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and it strengthens the implementation of the support fund for feminist organizations. But we also work a lot to fight against gender-based violence against women and girls, which is really, among all the feminist issues, it's maybe even more priority one. Encourage the universalization and implementation of the Istanbul Convention on combating violence against women and domestic violence. It's a rare convention, international, which has been ratified by almost all the countries in the world. But we have to implement it. That's maybe not a good task. We combat all forms of sexual violence, including conflict-related violence, and combat impunity for perpetrators by cooperating with the International Criminal Court, including the Trust Fund for Victims. And we strengthen the work of the diplomatic and consular network to ensure the protection of women nationals who are victims of violence abroad, providing victims with security, support them in their effort, and direct them to appropriate structures and services, both locally and in France. In Mumbai, honestly, we have a Feminist Foreign Policy group, which has been created just before I arrived. We were a group of 5 countries. There are still 5 countries, but they have changed in the meantime. As I mentioned, some disappeared. Canada is still a feminist diplomacy, but they are not active in Mumbai for reasons that I will not dwell on. Spain is no more with us. We hope to convince them to join again. But we are lucky to have Mexico and Chile which have joined us recently. We have Germany, we have Netherlands, and France as well. And many colleagues are very positive and trying to help. So we have this group which makes regularly events of mobilization, explanation, exchange of good practices. We had recently an event at the French residence with the Chief Secretary of the government of Maharashtra, who is for the first time a lady. This is Sulata Sonik. She came and explained a bit thoroughly. We had a fireside chat, a discussion with her to understand what was his career, her career, what did she face as a challenge as a woman. So it was very interesting, and we had also panelists and explaining how men and women have to join together, make effort together to push for the feminist objective. It is not a women's issue, it's a men and women issue. It's absolutely key that men understand this. So we are dedicated to promoting and practicing gender equality since 2022. As I mentioned, as FFP advocates, we regularly organize conferences, panel discussions, and engagement with think tanks and policymakers to advance gender parity and equal representation. And our goal is to share best practices and promote concrete action to achieve the objective of feminist foreign policy. In 2023, I'm happy to say that I collaborated with Madame Megha Kantaka, World Trade Center, under the banner of FFP, to hold a conversation around innovation, technological change, and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present some sort of innovative French foreign policy. Be assured that it's becoming a consensus in France. It was not the case at the beginning. It's always a challenge, it's always a fight. But now France seems clearly determined to move forward. I'm happy to embody this. Thank you very much.
Forward-looking and proactive and wanting to support the women and feminist policy. So what is the concern? Why the numbers are not increasing from 5 to 10 to 50 to 20? Maybe that was just a point which comes in my mind when I listen to you always.
To answer your question, there are different reasons. I think I will give you the French reason why we hesitated so long. In France, there is a consensus, which is a Republican consensus, which is, the French motto, which is liberty, equality, brotherhood. That's key. It's written on all the public monuments, all the public schools, all the public everything. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. Égalité, and among the three parts, most of the French thinks first equality. They think equality. And we call even that French egalitarianism, which is really more than equality, it's very small. So to decide to take part of the population and their rights as a specific, I would not say superior, but eminent objective would, in the mind of many, mean that we are less interested in the rest of the population. So it's a very intellectual problem, I think, for France. Equality. There is no, we are against, till recently, but totally against any sort of quotas, even positive discrimination, anything like that. It was something which was considered as going against Republican principles, which are deeply rooted in the DNA of French population. It was not that we were against promoting women, etc. But there was, I think, an intellectual reserve, worry that we would start making differences between all the citizens in the country. We decided to work on this. We decided to move forward, and we thought that because the situation, as I mentioned at the beginning, is very bordering and threatening in many cases, in many places, that we had to be more active anyway. So we adopted some laws, making some objective for the number of women in public services, in universities, etc. So there is ambassadors, new ambassadors. 40% of new ambassadors have to be women, even if we have only 20% diplomats who are women. So that's an objective, positive one. It's been clearly tested by many persons first, but it has been voted, it is a law, it is now implemented. I think for other countries, so we have this sort of reserve, which comes from our principles, which are still written at the top of the French Constitution. Still, we move forward. The second, what is important to know also is that diplomacy is not only internal issues, of course, it's really outside. Foreign issues, and for this, there was some reservation about the fact that if we don't do it at home, why promote it outside? This is behind us, it has been declared by the because we think there's so much to do, we can't be shy. We have to move forward and say it clearly. But the word feminist, for some people, it sounds like a revendication, like a fight, like something which is not a consensus. So some French were brilliant. It's behind us. For other countries, at least one where have feminist diplomacy and one decided to jump out, quit this diplomacy. I think you just have to watch who was elected as the new government. In Sweden, Netherlands, they are very conservative. And on this issue, they feel it is not their priority. It doesn't mean that Sweden, Netherlands, and other countries are not actively working in favor of women's rights. This is the consensus in Europe, and on this there is no, we are not going back, they are going back, but they don't want to publicize it that much, to make it as a top priority. It's among their objectives, it's not top priority. That may be the difference. And for the countries who do not want to join at all, that's the question you have to see on a case by case, but it's not easy in many countries. Why they don't want to push? Because the way women are treated in this country is far from being settled.
In France, in
Merci, Tissé.
I'd like to invite on stage Srimati Seena Jacob, who is the founder of Bookwallah. And we warmly welcome you, ma'am. Mrs. Sri Seena Jacob is a visionary founder of Bookwallah organization, conceived in 2009. Her initiative stems from personal experience, recognizing the transformatory power of story in overcoming hardship. Partnering with G. Riley Mills and Ranjit Nambiar, she has established Bookwallah in 2010, dedicated to sharing the healing and empowering impact of reading with children facing trauma. Over to you.
I was pleasantly surprised to see that photograph because that book is amazing. So, first of all, thank you, Dr. Megha, for this opportunity, and Melissa for introducing my one-week trip here to India. So I'm very honored to be here. Not only am I really feeling so grateful, I'm so inspired by all the artisan work I've been seeing and the stories that are woven going back so many years with the Indian civilization. It's something I would love to share with the rest of the world, so thank you for the opportunity. So I thought I'd begin by letting you know that today's talk is about my own personal journey, and it's taken quite a bit of time, many years, and only recently have I started to share it publicly. So please bear with me while I do this. So I love fairy tales, and I won't apologize. I believe in the power of once upon a time and happily ever after. And today I'd like to share with you how these once upon a times and happily ever afters saved my life and how it has an incredible power to save other children's lives. I'm sure you've heard of Kerala, but I was born in a small village, Kudalur, Kerala, which is right above the Indian Ocean and next to the Arabian Sea. And the house I lived in, my grandmother's house, was surrounded by mango trees, tapioca, papaya trees. And during the daytimes, I would hop, skip, and run, visiting neighbors, as you know, the community vibe of India, right? Visiting neighbors, uncles, aunts. And in the evenings, I would watch the sunset with my aunt, swimming in the small creek and sitting by the paddy fields. And life was good, and I was happy. But one day, at a young age, I was uprooted from all of that, and I had to leave India to join my parents, who had gone there earlier for further education and opportunities. And it was at that point, while America was a little confusing, I wasn't sure which culture, language, all of that. The one thing I can tell you is that it was the least of my problems. My destiny actually took on a darker path, a darker road. And I found myself really experiencing things that no child should ever experience over a long period of time, what they call long-term sustainable trauma. And that the shadows that surround it is not something I would like to share today, but I can tell you what I went through is something psychologists would call level 3 trauma, long-term sustainable trauma, which includes things like surviving long-term catastrophe, physical, mental, sexual abuse. And all of this has an incredible power to impact how you go about learning, how you go about emotionally dealing with situations. And this kind of pain, no matter what kind it is, we all believe that no child should ever have to experience this, right? Every child deserves the hope of a happy story. Sustainable trauma affects a child's brain development. And it can result in affecting memory, behavior learning, and emotionally being able to handle situations like I mentioned. But I think the greatest damage of all is how it can penetrate your consciousness to believe that you're not beautiful enough, you're not worthy enough, and do you even deserve to be loved? And this can penetrate your psyche so that it can actually impact in so many ways where it can lead you to highly destructive behaviors. And ultimately leading to tremendous costs to society, right? To your own health as well as society. Now, it's commonly believed that every child deserves to dream of what's possible. But when you are a victim and when you're a child of trauma, many things seem impossible. So the question is, how can we take an impressionable child, an impressionable victim, and turn it around so that way that person starts to believe in new possibilities? And for me, I was very lucky. I had the libraries in the United States, and I had access to wonderful stories such as Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Chronicles of Narnia, where all of these stories represented heroes overcoming something and ultimately becoming stronger, happier, transformed. And I disappeared into this world, and it was my solace, my inspiration, and I actually took on, I believe, the hero's journey itself, and picked up the characteristics of integrity, courage, passion, following through, but ultimately believing that my world is something that I too can create. I too have a choice to live happily ever after. So imagine, remember some of these lines, if you're familiar with the book Cinderella. No matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing, the dream that you wish can come true. That's Cinderella. Beauty and the Beast. She warned him not to be deceived by appearances, for beauty is found within. Ugly Duckling. How many of you have read The Ugly Duckling? So his own image, no longer ugly and disagreeable to look at, but graceful and a beautiful swan. So you could, as a young child, because I was an avid reader, these messages were continuously repeated, and I hungered for these messages. I needed these messages. And imagine if it's constantly repeated, you make believe, you reimagine. And what I reimagined is maybe I could be like Cinderella, be kind and have courage. Maybe like Beauty, it's okay, or the Beast, recognizing the inner beauty. And what if a story like Little Red Riding Hood, I can also confront my fear, or the big bad wolf, and shape my own destiny? What if I too have that choice of changing my life or being able to create the life I want? So these fairy tales saved my life. I believe these stories saved my life. And knowing this particular power is what I wanted to give to many more children who've experienced that themselves. I ended up, from a corporate perspective, I ended up going into banking, going into consulting, did my MBA, and worked primarily in the ideation stage of companies. But about 15 years ago, now I can say 15, I hate to say it, but it's been 15 years, I actually started to do some soul searching. And it came down to the fact that I knew that this was an incredible, powerful thing to do. Share that power and joy of stories to other children. And as we all know, there's about 150 million orphans around the world, 25 million refugee children, and increasingly the number of children facing trauma is just continuously increasing. So Bookwallah was formed in 2010 with a suitcase of storybooks. Didn't know what I was doing. I didn't come from the nonprofit world. And I took that storybook and we've evolved today to creating beautiful, magical spaces that are safe havens, sanctuaries for children who've experienced something extreme. And finally, the local volunteers, some of them here with me today, they're the ones who bring that gift, that book, to life with storytelling as well as activities designed to bring the message of healing, empowering, and transforming for these children. So imagine facing a child who's just been a victim from the streets, the fear that person faces, right? You need to reestablish trust. So we've seen experiences of kids who are just been abandoned on the roadside, coming in and afraid to shake your hand. Now they come up to you, they're eager to see you. They recognize our big brothers, big sisters, or the fairy godmothers, as I call it. So while this is all qualitative observations, Bookwallah has also started to look at the psychological impact, truly what the psychological impact is in quantitative ways. So we are using things like Children's Hope Scale, which measures hope. And when you have an increase in hope, the likelihood of academic success and other successful outcomes really, truly start to materialize. Give me a minute. So hope is probably the single most positive outcome that can come out of reading these stories. And I'd like to share one particular story of a girl named Rishi. So about 10 years ago, a girl came into an orphanage, and we were conducting our storytelling sessions. And we found her very angry, distrustful, interrupting our sessions, and we didn't know why. Soon after, we learned she was sexually abused by her own biological father, but was brave enough to speak up because he was moving on to the younger sister. So to save that child's life, she spoke up. But as a result, the family, the children were kicked out of the home, and they had to move into the respective children's homes. Now, Rishi herself, 6 months into our storytelling sessions, came back, gave a beautiful drawing of ducks in the water to one of our volunteer project leaders. And her explanation was, before I was in the river, and now sometimes I could fly. She was only 10 years old at that time. And we know that is a tremendous, powerful, healing moment, because from that moment on, we knew by the time she reaches 18, she could choose to live the life she chose, right? She could live the life and not let her past dictate what her future could potentially be. So imagine the next time you see a fairy tale, a book. This is a lot more than just entertainment. It truly is a powerful vehicle, and I can speak to this. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I am someone who moved from victim to survivor to victor. And that's a powerful thing to know that we have the choice to live. We have the option to live happily ever after if we choose. Thank you.
Now, Srimati Banai, G to please come and felicitate. Give a small token of our appreciation to Ms. Srimati Seena Jacob.
Well, I have read about it. Yes, very good. Did a TED talk. Yes, I must tell all of you that she did a TED talk, and I've heard her, and she was wonderful. Yes, I just come to one of the sessions. Thank you. It's quite nice. It's not good to research and introduce this. Please. Please, yes.
That's the team, I think.
On behalf of this ends, why don't you come up? And they all know I love artisan gifts and earrings and wanda and the closest to our heart, we will be there with one time. So there. Their photo was so inspiring to listen, and I'm so happy. And we congratulate you for it. My wish out. I can always say my kids, I'm always fine. Everything about that, that's a good thing.